The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting a warm golden glow over the small seaside town. Cars hummed along the quiet streets, and the salty breeze carried whispers of waves crashing against the shore. At the heart of this picturesque scene stood the Ocean View Hotel, a modest yet charming establishment known for its friendly staff and cozy rooms. Marcus Anderson stepped out of his car, adjusting his baseball cap as he took in the view. A decorated veteran who had served 2 tours overseas, Marcus now faced battles of a different kind. Diagnosed with PTSD after returning home, he relied heavily on his service dog, Max, a loyal German shepherd, trained to help him navigate moments of anxiety and panic. Max wasn't just a companion, he was Marcus's lifeline. As Marcus approached the hotel entrance, suitcase in one hand and Max's leash in the other, he felt a flicker of unease. Traveling alone always made him nervous, but this trip was important. He'd come to attend a veteran support group meeting nearby, hoping to connect with others who understood what he was going through. Inside the lobby, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. The warmth of the evening outside seemed absent here. The air conditioning blasted cold air, and the sterile scent of cleaning products filled the room. Behind the front desk stood Evelyn Carter, the hotel manager. She was a tall woman in her late 40s, impeccably dressed in a navy blue blazer and pencil skirt. Her sharp features and stern expression gave off an air of authority that intimidated most guests. Evelyn glanced up from her computer screen as the door chimed, signaling Marcus's arrival. Her eyes narrowed slightly when she saw Max. "Good evening," she said curtly, her tone clipped. "Do you have a reservation?" "Yes, ma'am," Marcus replied politely, offering a small smile despite feeling self-conscious under her scrutinizing gaze. "It's under Anderson." Evelyn tapped a few keys on her keyboard before nodding. "Ah, yes. Room 204. But, instead of handing over the keycard immediately, she paused, her lips pursing into a thin line as her gaze drifted downward to Max. "Is that your pet?" she asked, her voice laced with skepticism. Marcus stiffened slightly but maintained his composure. "This is Max, my service dog," he explained calmly. "He helps me manage my PTSD." Evelyn raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "A service dog? Really?" she said, her tone dripping with disbelief. "He doesn't look like any service animal I've ever seen. Are you sure he's not just a regular pet you brought along for company?" Marcus clenched his jaw, fighting back the frustration bubbling inside him. This wasn't the first time someone had questioned Max's role, but it never got easier. "I assure you, ma'am, he's certified," Marcus said firmly, reaching into his pocket to pull out Max's official certification card. "If you'd like to see—" "Oh, spare me the theatrics," Evelyn interrupted, waving a dismissive hand. "We don't allow pets here, certified or not. You'll need to find somewhere else to stay." The words hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. His chest tightened, and he could feel the familiar symptoms of anxiety creeping in. Max sensed his distress immediately, nudging his leg gently in reassurance. Marcus took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. He couldn't afford to lose control. Not here, not now. "I think there's been some misunderstanding," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the storm brewing inside him. "Under federal law, service animals are allowed wherever their handlers go. It's not optional." Evelyn crossed her arms, her expression hardening further. "Listen, I run a respectable business here. If I let every guest bring their so-called service animals, this place would turn into a zoo. Now, unless you plan to leave that mutt outside, I suggest you find another hotel." The tension in the room was palpable. Other guests milling about the lobby began to take notice, glancing curiously at the unfolding confrontation. Marcus felt the weight of their stares, coupled with Evelyn's blatant disrespect, pressing down on him. For a moment he considered walking away, to avoid the conflict, to protect himself from further humiliation, but something inside him refused to back down. Little did Evelyn know, her actions were about to set off a chain of events that would change both of their lives forever. The tension in the hotel lobby thickened as Evelyn's dismissive words hung in the air. Marcus stood frozen, gripping Max's leash tightly, his knuckles turning white. He could feel the heat rising to his face, not from anger alone, but from the sting of being judged and dismissed so casually. It wasn't just about Evelyn. It was about every time someone had looked at him and assumed they knew his story without hearing a word. Max whined softly, sensing Marcus's growing distress. The dog shifted closer, pressing his warm body against Marcus's leg in silent support. For a moment, Marcus closed his eyes, focusing on Max's presence. His breathing slowed slightly, but the weight of the situation remained heavy on his shoulders. "I'm not leaving my dog," Marcus said finally, his voice firm despite the tremor threatening to break through. "And I'm not leaving this hotel unless you can show me proof that you're within your rights to deny me service." Evelyn arched an eyebrow, clearly unaccustomed to guests challenging her authority. She leaned forward over the counter, her polished nails clicking against the desk as she folded her arms. "Let me make this simple for you," she said coldly. "If you want to stay here, you'll have to leave. That outside." Her tone carried a note of finality, but Marcus refused to budge. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket again, pulling out a printed copy of the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA guidelines. He slid it across the counter toward Evelyn. "This is federal law," he explained evenly. "Service animals are allowed anywhere their handlers go. Denying me access isn't just wrong, it's illegal." Evelyn barely glanced at the paper before pushing it back toward him. "I don't care what some piece of paper says," she snapped. "This is my hotel and I set the rules here." A murmur rippled through the small crowd of onlookers who had gathered nearby. Some looked sympathetic while others seemed uncomfortable witnessing the escalating confrontation. Among them was a middle-aged man named Harold, a frequent guest at the Ocean View Hotel. Harold stepped forward hesitantly, clearing his throat to get Evelyn's attention. "Excuse me, Ms. Carter," Harold began cautiously, "but I think the gentleman has a point. Service dogs are protected by law, aren't they? Maybe we should—" "Stay out of this, Harold," Evelyn interrupted sharply, shooting him a glare that silenced him instantly. Turning back to Marcus, she added, "You're causing a scene. If you know what's good for you, you'll take your pet and yourself out of here before things get worse." Marcus felt a surge of frustration bubbling inside him, but instead of responding immediately, he took a step back. Max stayed close, his intelligent eyes locked onto Evelyn as if sizing her up. Marcus knew he couldn't let this moment define him. He'd faced far greater challenges in his life. But something about Evelyn's stubborn refusal to acknowledge the law struck a nerve. Before he could respond, however, another voice joined the fray. A young woman named Clara, one of the hotel housekeepers, emerged from a side door leading to the staff area. She had overheard the commotion and decided to intervene. With a tentative smile, she approached Marcus, speaking gently. "Sir, I apologize for all this. Would you mind waiting just a moment? Let me see if I can help resolve this." Clara turned to Evelyn, her expression soft but firm. "Ms. Carter, perhaps we should double-check our policy on service animals. We wouldn't want any misunderstandings or potential legal issues." Evelyn's jaw tightened, clearly annoyed by Clara's interference. After a long pause, she sighed heavily and muttered under her breath, "Fine. Do whatever you want." With that, she turned on her heel and disappeared into the back office, leaving behind an awkward silence. Clara gave Marcus an apologetic, "Look, please excuse her behavior, sir. I'll make sure you're checked in properly. Your room will be ready shortly." Marcus nodded gratefully, though the encounter had left him shaken. As Clara handed him his keycard, he couldn't shake the feeling that this incident wasn't truly over. Something told him that Evelyn wouldn't let this go so easily, and he was right. Unbeknownst to Marcus, Evelyn was already plotting her next move, determined to regain control of the situation. What she didn't realize, however, was how much this decision would cost her, and how profoundly it would change her perspective on life. Marcus entered room 204, a modest space with cream-colored walls and a small balcony overlooking the ocean. The gentle sound of waves crashing against the shore filtered through the open sliding door, offering a brief moment of calm after the storm in the lobby. Max padded softly across the carpet, sniffing around the room before settling near the foot of the bed. Marcus sank onto the edge of the mattress, his hands trembling as he rubbed his temples. The confrontation with Evelyn replayed in his mind like a broken record. He had faced prejudice before, too many times to count. But something about her dismissive attitude cut deeper than usual. It wasn't just her words, it was the way she looked at him, as though his service dog was nothing more than an inconvenience. For someone who relied on Max for emotional stability, that dismissal felt personal. Max rested his head on Marcus's knee, nudging him gently. "You're always there for me, buddy," Marcus murmured, scratching behind the dog's ears. Max let out a soft whine, his tail thumping against the floor in response. Even without words, their bond spoke volumes. In moments like these, Max wasn't just a trained companion, he was family. As night fell, Marcus tried to relax. He turned on the bedside lamp, casting a warm glow over the room, and pulled out his phone to check the details of tomorrow's Veterans Support Group meeting. But no matter how hard he tried to focus, his thoughts kept drifting back to Evelyn. Her disdainful glare lingered in his memory, stirring up emotions he'd worked so hard to manage. Around midnight, Marcus finally drifted into an uneasy sleep. His dreams were restless, filled with fragmented memories of war zones and crowded streets. Just as he began to slip deeper into slumber, a sharp knock on the door jolted him awake. Max sprang to his feet, growling low in his throat, his body tense and alert. "Who is it?" Marcus called out cautiously, his heart pounding. No answer came, but another knock followed, louder this time. Max moved closer to the door, his protective instincts kicking in. Marcus grabbed the baseball bat he kept by the bed, a precautionary measure he'd adopted since returning home, and approached the door slowly. Peering through the peephole, he saw nothing but an empty hallway. His pulse raced as he unlocked the door and cracked it open slightly. The corridor was silent, save for the faint hum of the air conditioning. Confused but unwilling to ignore the disturbance, Marcus stepped outside, scanning both directions. Still nothing. "It's probably nothing," he muttered under his breath, though doubt gnawed at him. He glanced down at Max, whose ears remained perked, attuned to every sound. Something didn't feel right. Back inside the room, Marcus double-checked the locks and closed the curtains tightly. Despite his efforts to settle back into bed, sleep eluded him. Every creak of the building, every distant noise from the street below, made him flinch. Max stayed close, lying on the floor next to him, ever vigilant. Meanwhile, downstairs in the hotel office, Evelyn sat hunched over her desk, scrolling through old guest logs on her computer. Her frustrations simmered beneath the surface, manifesting in sharp clicks of her keyboard and irritated sighs. She couldn't shake the image of Marcus standing in her lobby, calm and composed despite her attempts to intimidate him. There was something about him, his quiet strength, that unsettled her. Determined to regain control, Evelyn picked up her phone and dialed a number. When the line connected, she spoke in hushed tones. "I need you to do something for me," she said, her voice cold and calculating. "There's a guest here. Let's just say I want to ensure he doesn't cause any trouble." Unbeknownst to Marcus, Evelyn's actions were setting the stage for a confrontation neither of them could foresee. As the hours ticked by, tension mounted, not only within the walls of the Ocean View Hotel but also within Evelyn herself. Little did she know her choices would soon force her to confront not only Marcus but also her own deeply ingrained biases. The first rays of sunlight streamed through the cracks in the curtains, painting golden streaks across the hotel room floor. Marcus stirred awake, his body stiff from a night spent tossing and turning. Max was already alert, sitting upright by the door with his ears pricked forward, as though anticipating the day ahead. For a moment, Marcus envied the dog's ability to remain calm and focused despite uncertainty. After stretching and splashing cold water on his face, Marcus decided it was time to start the day. He had plans to attend the Veterans Support Group meeting later that morning, but he needed coffee first. Grabbing Max's leash, he headed out of the room, careful to avoid making too much noise in the quiet hallway. As he stepped into the elevator, Marcus noticed Clara, the housekeeper who had intervened on his behalf the previous evening, pushing a cart loaded with fresh linens down the corridor. She spotted him and offered a warm smile. "Good morning, Mr. Anderson," she said kindly. "How are you settling in?" "Morning," Marcus replied, nodding politely. "It's been fine, I guess. Thanks again for helping me yesterday." Clara hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I'm really sorry about Ms. Carter. She can be difficult sometimes, but don't let her get to you. You're welcome here, okay?" Her words carried sincerity, and Marcus appreciated the gesture. "Thanks," he said softly. "That means a lot." When they reached the lobby, the atmosphere felt different from the night before. The early hour meant fewer guests milling about, giving the space a serene quality. Marcus made his way to the small cafe tucked into one corner of the hotel, where he ordered a cup of black coffee and found a quiet table near the window. Max settled at his feet, his presence a comforting anchor. Unbeknownst to Marcus, Evelyn watched him from behind the reception desk. Her eyes narrowed as she observed the ease with which other guests interacted with him and with Max. A family seated nearby even stopped to pet the dog, laughing as Max wagged his tail enthusiastically. Evelyn's jaw tightened. Why did everyone else seem so accepting of this man and his service animal? What made them blind to what she saw? Her thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of two men dressed in plain clothes. They approached the front desk, exchanging nods with Evelyn before disappearing into the staff area. These were the individuals she'd contacted late last night, private security contractors hired to handle problematic guests discreetly. Though their methods weren't always above board, Evelyn trusted them to resolve matters quietly without drawing attention. Upstairs, Marcus finished his coffee and prepared to leave for the support group meeting. As he and Max exited the cafe, he caught sight of Evelyn speaking urgently with the two men near the elevators. Their hushed conversation ended abruptly when they noticed him approaching. One of the men gave Evelyn a curt nod before heading toward the stairwell. Marcus frowned, his instincts telling him something wasn't right. He glanced down at Max, whose body language had shifted subtly. He stood closer to Marcus, his muscles taut and ready. "What do you think, buddy?" Marcus whispered, more to himself than to the dog. "You picking up on something?" Max responded, with a low growl, his gaze fixed on the figures retreating down the hallway. Marcus shook his head, unsure whether to trust his gut or dismiss it as paranoia. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that trouble was brewing. Back at the front desk, Evelyn crossed her arms, watching as Marcus disappeared outside. Her expression was conflicted, part satisfaction, part unease. She had set events in motion, but now doubt crept in. Was this really necessary? Or was she letting her pride dictate her actions? Little did Evelyn know, her decision would soon force her to confront not only Marcus but also the consequences of her own prejudice. Meanwhile, Marcus remained unaware of the storm gathering around him, focused instead on finding solace among fellow veterans who understood his struggles. The Veterans Support Group meeting was held in a small community center just a short walk from the hotel. As Marcus and Max entered the room, they were greeted by a warm chorus of hellos. The space was simple, a circle of folding chairs arranged around a table with coffee and snacks, but the atmosphere was filled with camaraderie. For the first time since arriving in town, Marcus felt a sense of belonging. "Hey there," said a man named Greg, standing to shake Marcus's hand. "I'm glad you made it. This is Max, huh? He's a good-looking dog." Marcus smiled faintly, appreciating the genuine welcome. "Thanks for having us. Max has been my rock through everything." As the meeting began, participants took turns sharing their stories. Moments of triumph, struggles with PTSD, and the challenges of reintegrating into civilian life. Marcus listened intently, nodding along as others spoke. When it was his turn, he hesitated at first, but eventually opened up about his experiences overseas and how Max had helped him navigate the darkest days of his recovery. "I didn't think I'd ever feel normal again," Marcus admitted, his voice steady despite the weight of his words. "But Max, he doesn't judge me. He doesn't care about my past or what I've been through. He just shows up every day ready to help however he can. The group erupted into applause, their support palpable. Marcus felt a lump rise in his throat, overwhelmed by the kindness of strangers who understood exactly what he was going through. For a brief moment, the anxiety that had plagued him since checking into the Ocean View Hotel faded away. Meanwhile, back at the hotel, Evelyn paced nervously behind the reception desk. Her earlier confidence wavered as she replayed the events of the morning in her mind. She couldn't stop thinking about the way guests had interacted with Marcus, how natural and accepting they seemed. Even Clara's sympathetic remarks echoed in her ears. "Maybe I overreacted," Evelyn muttered under her breath, though no one was there to hear her. But then doubt crept back in. If she backed down now, wouldn't it look like she was admitting defeat? Worse yet, what if other guests started bringing pets disguised as service animals? Her internal conflict was interrupted by the arrival of one of the security contractors she'd hired. He approached the desk, his expression grim. "We've got eyes on him," he said quietly. "He left with his dog about an hour ago. Should we proceed as planned?" Evelyn hesitated, her fingers drumming against the counter. Something about the man's tone made her uneasy. "What exactly does proceed mean?" she asked cautiously. The contractor shrugged, avoiding direct eye contact. "Just making sure he understands where he stands. Nothing too drastic." Though the response should have reassured her, it only deepened Evelyn's unease. What had she gotten herself into? Back at the community center, Marcus wrapped up his story to more applause. As the meeting concluded, he exchanged numbers with a few members, promising to stay in touch. Feeling lighter than he had in weeks, he decided to take a longer route back to the hotel, enjoying the fresh air and Max's company. But halfway through their walk, Marcus noticed something odd. A black sedan pulled onto the road behind them, maintaining a steady distance. At first he tried to brush it off as coincidence, but when the car turned down side streets to keep pace, his suspicions grew. Max stiffened beside him, his hackles rising. "You see that too, don't you, boy?" Marcus murmured, gripping the leash tighter. His heart raced as adrenaline coursed through his veins. Years of military training kicked in, sharpening his senses. Whoever was following them wasn't being subtle. Suddenly the sedan sped up, pulling alongside them. The passenger window rolled down, revealing one of the men Evelyn had spoken to earlier. Before Marcus could react, the man leaned out, shouting, "You're causing trouble at the hotel. Time to leave." Max barked loudly, stepping protectively in front of Marcus. Passers-by turned to stare, startled by the commotion. Marcus clenched his fists, anger bubbling to the surface. "Who sent you?" he demanded, his voice firm despite the tension radiating from his body. The man smirked, clearly unbothered by Marcus's defiance. "Doesn't matter. Just pack your bags and go. You're not wanted there." With that, the sedan sped off, leaving Marcus standing on the sidewalk, his mind reeling. It didn't take long for him to piece together who might be behind this harassment. Evelyn's face flashed in his mind, her dismissive glare burning brighter than ever. For a moment, Marcus considered walking away, to avoid further conflict and protect himself from whatever else might come his way. But then he remembered the faces of the veterans he'd met that morning, their shared understanding, their unwavering support. Running wouldn't solve anything. If anything, it would let people like Evelyn win. Determined, Marcus straightened, his posture, and continued toward the hotel, Max trotting loyally beside him. Whatever happened next, he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't backing down. Marcus returned to the Ocean View Hotel with Max by his side, his jaw set in determination. The confrontation in the street had only solidified his resolve. He wasn't going to let Evelyn or anyone else intimidate him into leaving. As he entered the lobby, heads turned. Some guests whispered among themselves, clearly aware of the growing tension surrounding him. Evelyn stood behind the reception desk, pretending to review paperwork, though her eyes darted nervously toward Marcus as he approached. Her hands trembled, slightly as she adjusted a stack of folders, betraying the unease beneath her composed exterior. "Ms. Carter," Marcus began, his voice calm but firm, "we need to talk." Evelyn forced a tight smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. "Mr. Anderson?" she replied coolly. "Is there a problem?" "You know exactly what the problem is," Marcus said, leaning forward slightly. "I was followed today, harassed by two men who made it clear they were sent here because of you. Is this how you treat all your guests, or am I special?" The accusation hung heavy in the air. Evelyn's face flushed red, but whether from guilt or anger, it was hard to tell. She glanced around the lobby, noticing the curious stares of other guests. Lowering her voice, she snapped, "I have no idea what you're talking about. If someone bothered you, that's not my responsibility." "It is your responsibility," Marcus countered, his tone sharp. "You've gone out of your way to make me feel unwelcome since I arrived. First, you tried to deny me access because of Max. Now this? You crossed a line." Before Evelyn could respond, Clara appeared from the hallway leading to the housekeeping area. Seeing the heated exchange, she hesitated for a moment before stepping closer. "What's going on?" she asked cautiously. "This doesn't concern you, Clara," Evelyn said sharply, shooting her a warning glare. Clara ignored her, turning instead to Marcus. "Are you okay, Mr. Anderson?" "I'm fine," Marcus replied, his gaze never leaving Evelyn. "But I'd like an explanation. What kind of person hires thugs to scare off a guest, and a veteran at that?" The word veteran seemed to strike a chord. Evelyn froze, her expression faltering for the first time. For years, she had prided herself on running a successful business, but now doubt crept into her mind. Was she really willing to tarnish her reputation over something so petty? Her silence spoke volumes. Clara stepped forward, addressing Evelyn directly. "Ms. Carter, if you did this, if you hired those men, you need to stop. This isn't right. We don't treat people like this." Evelyn opened her mouth to argue but found herself unable to speak. Instead, she looked away, her shoulders slumping, under the weight of her own actions. The truth was undeniable. She had let her pride and prejudice blind her. Evelyn started, her voice barely above a whisper. She cleared her throat, trying again. "I may have overreacted, but I didn't mean for things to escalate like this." Marcus crossed his arms, unimpressed. "Overreacted? Sending people to threaten me isn't overreacting. It's harassment, and it ends now." Realizing she had no choice but to face the consequences, Evelyn nodded reluctantly. "You're right," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I'll call them off. I'll fix this." As Evelyn retreated to her office to make the necessary calls, Marcus exhaled deeply, feeling a mix of relief and lingering frustration. Clara placed a reassuring hand on his arm. "Thank you for standing up to her," she said softly. "Not many people would have the courage to do that." Marcus offered a small smile. "I'm not doing it for me," he replied. "I'm doing it for everyone who deserves to be treated fairly." Word of the incident spread quickly among the hotel staff and guests. By evening, Evelyn emerged from her office looking visibly shaken. She called a brief meeting with her team, apologizing for her behavior and promising to implement better training for handling situations involving service animals. Though some remained skeptical, others saw it as a step toward redemption. For Marcus, the day ended on a bittersweet note. While justice had been served, the experience left him weary. Sitting on his balcony with Max curled up beside him, he gazed out at the ocean, reflecting on everything that had happened. He knew the road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but he also knew he wasn't alone. The next morning, the Ocean View Hotel felt different, quieter, almost reflective. Evelyn stood behind the reception desk, her usual sharp demeanor softened by a visible heaviness in her eyes. She had spent most of the night wrestling with guilt, replaying Marcus's words and the disapproving looks from her staff. For the first time in years, she questioned not just her actions but the person she had become. As Marcus walked into the lobby with Max, Evelyn straightened up, steeling herself for what needed to be said. "Mr. Anderson," she called out, her voice steady despite the nerves bubbling inside her. "Can we talk for a moment?" Marcus paused, studying her carefully before nodding. He approached the desk, Max sitting obediently at his side. The tension between them was palpable, though it carried a new undertone. Not hostility, but uncertainty. "I owe you an apology," Evelyn began, surprising even herself with how sincere the words sounded. "What I did was wrong, both denying you access initially and everything that followed. I let my biases cloud my judgment, and I'm truly sorry." Marcus raised an eyebrow, clearly taken aback by her admission. "Apologies are easy," he said evenly. "What matters is whether you mean them, and whether you'll change because of them." Evelyn nodded, meeting his gaze directly. "I do mean it, and yes, I want to change. I've already started making changes here at the hotel. We're going to hold mandatory training sessions for all staff on ADA laws and proper etiquette regarding service animals. This won't happen again. Not to you or anyone else." Her words hung in the air, raw and honest. Marcus studied her face, searching for any trace of insincerity. What he found instead was vulnerability, a glimpse of someone willing to confront their flaws. Slowly, he extended his hand. "Thank you," he said simply. "That's all I wanted, to be treated fairly." Evelyn shook his hand, relief washing over her features. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. Later, that day, Evelyn made another decision, one that surprised everyone, including herself. She invited Clara to join her in organizing a community event aimed at raising awareness about PTSD and supporting veterans. The idea came to her during a quiet moment of reflection. If Marcus had taught her anything, it was the importance of understanding and empathy. The event took place 2 weeks later, transforming the hotel's outdoor patio into a space filled with booths, speakers, and activities. Veterans shared their stories. Local organizations provided resources, and guests mingled, learning more about the challenges faced by those who served. Marcus attended, reluctantly at first, but soon found himself moved by the turnout and the genuine support from the community. During the event, Evelyn approached Marcus once more. "Thank you for inspiring this," she said softly. "I know it doesn't undo what happened, but I hope it shows that I'm serious about changing. For the better." Marcus smiled faintly, acknowledging her effort. "It's a good start," he replied. "And who knows? Maybe others will follow your lead." As the sun set over the ocean, casting a golden glow across the gathering, Marcus stood beside Max, watching as people connected and shared laughter. For the first time in a long while, he felt hopeful, not just for himself, but for humanity. Evelyn, too, felt a renewed sense of purpose, realizing that growth often begins with confronting uncomfortable truths. In the end, the Ocean View Hotel became known not just for its scenic views, but also for its commitment to inclusivity and compassion. And while neither Marcus nor Evelyn emerged unchanged, they both carried forward lessons that would shape their lives forever. This conclusion ties together the emotional arcs of both characters, while leaving room for optimism and personal growth. Let me know if you'd like any adjustments.